Hi, welcome. I'm John Allen, host of Out in New Haven, where once a month we take a different topic of interest to the LGBTQ community in New Haven and Connecticut and explore it in depth. The New Haven Pride Center is the first queer center in downtown New Haven and one of only two in the state. We're the facilitators of the Dorothy Awards, which is the largest award ceremony for LGBT people in Connecticut. And today we're going to be talking about a provocative subject, but one that is very much of interest and importance to the LGBT community in Connecticut. And that's on the Connecticut leather and fetish community. I'm delighted to have with me two award-winning leather men, Mr. Connecticut Leather 2017, Ian Scooby Rossman, and Mr. Connecticut Leather 2019, Ryan Sperry. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah. So I guess we'll start it off by asking, what is the leather community in Connecticut?
Oh, definitely, John. The leather community here in Connecticut is definitely, we have a strong and a long history here of support through the motor clubs. There's a number of motor clubs across the state that still we, to some extent, draw from. But the leather community, we welcome the larger kink community as a whole here in Connecticut. There's a lot of different expressions sexually within the fetish community, and the leather community has come to embrace that and to represent it as a whole.
Mm-hmm. So I'm hearing several things. I'm hearing the leather community, I'm hearing the fetish community, I'm hearing the kink community. Are all these three concepts or words, are they all mean the same thing, or is there a difference?
A lot of it can be used interchangeably for our purposes, at least here tonight. But there are some slight differences between all the different terms. Kink is a lot more about the activity. Fetish is about more the overall activity. Leather can sometimes be used as an umbrella term for everything.
Yes. And actually, I think, doesn't it also sort of refer to the BDSM community, which stands for bondage and discipline and sadomasochism, or slave master, I've actually seen referred to. Mm-hmm.
Oh, definitely. The leather community has been given this kind of, over time, a label as being sort of like a fetish or a kink, a part of that kink or fetish community. And I think that us, to a certain extent, we've kind of embraced the larger kink community that might not necessarily involve leather or might not necessarily involve the BDSM. It's the bigger tent sort of emphasis that we try to push, then the better it is for all of us to kind of express where we are and what we like, really. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
When I was doing some research for this topic today, and I'm just amazed at how much is out there on the internet. And certainly looking through my own personal library and going back over 30 years of buying books about a variety of LGBT topics, I'm just amazed at what is actually available. And it doesn't, it sort of, I think, has this almost sort of a negative connotation in many regards, and yet it is so prevalent. And it seems like, so many people are involved in this in some form or another.
Right. A lot of times in popular culture, BDSM has gotten a very scary, a very frightening attitude for a lot of people because they're not used to it, and they just don't like to even experiment with something because they're afraid of being hurt or being ridiculed for enjoying a BDSM activity. But that's what a lot of what we do is to let people experience for the first time BDSM or kink, their fetish, in a safe environment so that they can enjoy their sexual experience a little bit more. So it's a way of just exploring new things for people.
Mm-hmm. So if somebody is involved in the community or wants to understand more about what a fetish is, I think that leather is certainly something that people tend to think of, but it could be, you've often heard, somebody has a foot fetish or an underwear fetish or, I don't know, it just seems like there's so many different kinds of fetishes that people can have. And what is sort of occurring when you're hearing somebody discuss a fetish? What's the whole purpose of all this?
Well, I mean, especially here in Connecticut, I mean, we have a bit of a puritanical sort of past here. So, for us, there's a lot of wonderful, healthy sort of aspects of sexual expression. And unfortunately, sometimes, we get caught up in this, in a lot of fears that are associated with it. And I think, one of the events that the leather community hosts here, the Cruisers event, definitely offers that space for people to experience these things without that judgment or without that sort of societal pressure. I mean, we all carry to some extent, sexual shames, and that can be very unhealthy, and it can definitely negatively affect our lives if we don't, express ourselves truly. And I think that the leather community sees itself as kind of a doorway to that entire fetish and kink community. And I definitely think, as far as pop culture, there certainly are both negative and positive, depictions of leather and fetishism. And I think we just really have to take it with a grain of salt, some of that negative, like, comedic sort of way that it's interjected in different pieces of pop culture.
I think that, certainly the thing that comes to mind right now is that 50 Shades of Grey. Just sort of, when I was looking through through all these websites and literature and hearing about, reading about the 50 Shades of Grey, everyone wanted to say, well, it's kind of like 50 Shades of Grey, but it's not 50 Shades of Grey.
Right.
And it looks like it's because 50 Shades of Grey is more about non-consensual activity that was abusive and hurtful, and yet that's so different than what you're talking about.
Correct. Everything that we do is very consensual. You always have permission before, during, and after the activity to make sure that both partners are enjoying the scene that's happening. And really for the excitement of everyone, because if one person is being hurt or injured, there's no use having the scene being done. You don't want to break your toys.
Exactly.
Toys are a big part of it. Yeah. But the three things that I had seen in one of the articles that I read was that, there's three key principles in the BDSM community, and that would be safety, that all parties work to make sure that no harm is being done, that sanity, that everything is done with a level head, so you don't want people intoxicated or high on drugs or just not being able to be aware of their surroundings. And then consensuality, that everyone consents to what is occurring. So that's the importance of safe words, maybe, or just knowing if this is something that's being explored with your long-term partner, that you all understand, that you have safety mechanisms in place so that no one's getting hurt.
Correct. It's all about safety, checking with your partner throughout the scene that you're doing, making sure that you have the proper equipment to protect somebody. Now, if someone's doing bondage rope play, you want to make sure you have scissors nearby. Now, if you're doing fire play, you want to make sure that you have a fire extinguisher nearby. Just make sure that there's something there for the safety of all the participants before you can participate.
Now, you had mentioned earlier that there's the Mr. Connecticut Leather, which is a social organization, but there's also a more active sexual organization connected to it, the CT Cruisers, which obviously CT for Connecticut, the Connecticut Cruisers. And are there other organizations that are out there that in Connecticut that are operating?
Well, CT Cruisers is the main organization for gay males to participate in. Yeah. There's the Society that meets up in Hartford that does a lot more for the pansexual and queer community.
And that's called the Society?
The Society. There's also NELA, the New England Leather Association, which does more of the regional outreach.
Is that based out of Boston?
Based out of Boston, but they do events all throughout Providence, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and other.
And where's the CT Cruisers based out of?
Usually they have them in Meriden, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And there's also Onyx. It's a leather organization for people of color, and they operate out of New York City. But they definitely do pull from. They're New York Northeast, so they do pull from Fairfield and from the New Haven area too, as far as membership. So there are a number of organizations, as well as I recently have been getting. I'm not sure that it necessarily coincides with the kink community, but SAGE is something that I know that a lot of, in other states, the kink community is involved with, which is more of an elderly sort of a group for, for the LGBTQ community that's getting on in years.
Not that there's any ageism, right?
Oh, no.
Well, one of the articles that I found, I was just fascinated by this, that within, and this was reported in Smithsonian Magazine in 2014, that, and this goes to not just within the LGBT community, but that within the general population, that there was a study that came out in 2006 that said that 36% of Americans are engaging in some type of BDSM within their relationship or within clubs. I mean, that's a staggering number to realize, and yet there's so much embarrassment and shame that seems to be connected with this. I just don't understand it.
There is a lot of stigma because people are just afraid that they don't want to be shown as an outcast for enjoying their fetishes. But there's simple fetishes like even when you spank somebody during a scene, or if you hold somebody's hands down, that's considered bondage. If you put a blindfold on your partner, that's a way of involving kink play in your daily routine. So it's just little things like that. It's part of kink and fetish, but it's just things people don't like to talk about because they're so embarrassed about it.
Oh, sure. And I'm certain that 36% is probably much higher, depending on how they, not everybody really.
I know.
wants to
I always
admit.
think everybody's gay until proven otherwise, and I'm sure everyone is doing some type of kink play, whether they admit
I hope
it or
they're
not.
gaydar. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's really amazing. But and the other thing that came out in this was that in the study that they discovered that it actually that people that engage in this and identify about it and have a healthy attitude about some type of kink play are actually more have reduced psychological distress than others do.
Yeah,
I'll take that.
yeah. A lot of psychologists believe that because of the extra release of endorphins and because people can work through a lot more of their issues, that just overall they have much happier outcomes.
Right.
They're a lot more emotionally adjusted.
There's so much communication with it, I find. Like before, like if we do at the Cruisers event, if we were to do like a flogging demonstration, there's so much discussion that happens with the person that's volunteering, to make sure that they know the basic safety that the person that's going to be flogging them is going to follow. And there's a lot of, throughout the entire session, there's a lot of back and forth communication, and frequently there's a lot of the red, yellow, green. Red is a full stop. Yellow is you're getting a little bit you're making me feel uncomfortable in a way, and green is I'm perfectly fine and keep going. And that continued conversation, it forces you across that kind of barrier, and I feel like there's a lot of freedom that comes with it, that closeness and discussion when you're working with somebody.
And you did bring a couple of toys that are used, and I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about some of the things that you did bring.
Sure. Well, the first thing you have is just some basic rope, just fun for tying somebody up. Yeah.
And some of the important safety things about rope to keep in mind is that you're gonna want to stay away from breaking off circulation. Numbness, redness, things like that are not part of the
And
bondage.
one of the other things was that there's a vet wrap that they were talking about, because that is wider and it's more pliable, and it's something that
And does not stick to your skin or body hair. So
it
very
doesn't
popular.
cause the marks
Yes.
either. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Some of the other equipment we brought, you have flogger, for flogging someone on the back or on the buttocks, a riding crop, very popular for spanking, or just hitting your partner. And then we have other little things like, far side here, yeah, a puppy hood, because pup play is very popular in the community.
Or other types of masks, right?
Other types of hoods or masks, yes. Pup play, kitty play, pony play, anything like that. It's all kinds of various things like that.
And then we have here, you were mentioning earlier, Ryan, about the hanky and the hanky code.
Yep. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, you really couldn't be as as out and as vocal about what your fetishes were. So a lot of times within the leather community, they developed this hanky code where you could basically tell people what your fetishes were by the color, and then depending on which side of your pants you place them in, basically indicated whether you were the person looking to act out these fetishes or have the fetishes act out upon. And like, for example, the gray is for bondage, saying that you like to be you like to tie or be tied up. And if you were to wear it in the back left, it means that you are the person that's tying. Whereas if it's in the back right, then you're the person that's looking to be tied up.
Right, and I remember this as something from the 1970s and 80s, and yet it's still being used.
Oh, certainly.
Yes, and there's actually hundreds of different colors of things you can use to
It
flag
is so amazing.
your fetish.
Yeah,
It's not as popular now, but it's still continuing on as a tradition for a lot of people today.
Right. And these were just some of the things that you brought, and I know that when especially when you go online and you just see there's so many different things. And the stores that are out there, this used to be something that I remember you would see in some, dark alley, there might be a store, and now they're right off the highway, and and they're a place that you can, anyone can go into, and any adult can go into, and have an opportunity to see what's available and actually touch them. When we were talking earlier about, like, when did you first become aware of that you might have an inkling toward this? And I know that for myself, it was, I went back into my own personal library, and we have a copy of 9 to 5, and I remembered that there was a scene in there where, Lily Tomlin and Dolly Parton and Jane Fonda wind up tying up their boss, and just being aware of what that he was being held captive in BDSM materials. And but when did you first know, and what were some of the cues to you?
I totally had a similar experience. There's an 80s movie with John Candy and Eugene Levy, Armed and Dangerous, and they both have to get into disguises at one point, and John Candy, hilariously, is in full drag and with this gigantic afro, and it's such a scene stealer. But Eugene Levy comes out and he's decked from head to toe in leather, and wearing assless chaps. And I remember as a kid thinking that despite the setup of the scene being for it to be comical, they were essentially making fun of both drag and leather, but despite that, it really, for me, I said, that looks like something that's very attractive. It looks like something, something that I could explore potentially. So it's excellent that you have a similar sort of reference from pop culture.
But as I've gone back retrospectively to think about and talking about this today, and realizing, that did have an impact on me. Yeah, how about you?
For me, it was when I was coming out of my 20s that I just started watching too many adult movies. I found the leather section of adult movies, and that just really excited me and really turned me on. I said, oh, I want to try that. And so, a little bit more research and finding people that wanted to experiment with me. I was able to find leather and find out what some kinks were.
That's really something. The other thing was, and this has come out certainly within the gay community now, is the Tom of Finland. There's a book out on Tom of Finland now. A movie out about Tom of Finland, and just talking about that his imagery was just so powerful. This hyper masculine images of men in leather and on motorcycles, and it was just had a profound effect not only on me but also on the community.
Right. Tom Finland was a huge influence on probably the entire leather culture throughout the U.S. and throughout the world, just because it was hyper-masculine and would give people a way to express things or a fantasy to look at, especially when during the 60s or 70s it was frowned upon to even be gay. This is the very hyper-masculine attitude of Tom Finland allowed people to just explore that a little bit more.
And certainly, men in uniform. I think
Yes.
uniforms are very popular. And I don't know if you have uniform nights, or
There's certainly.
do you find people are showing up in uniform?
Oh, definitely, absolutely, yes. We recently had one of the cruisers events was themed for uniforms, and I was definitely very surprised at the variety of uniforms. One person will come in with you'll get the stereotypical of army and cop and things along those lines, but then you'll see some people come in as a mechanic or as like as one of those Indy 500 sort of mechanic things. So people's imagination is definitely it's definitely incredible.
So it's not just police or army.
Sports uniforms very popular. Anything that people can really enjoy and because they think it's hot for them.
Right.
And that's like back to what we were saying earlier of providing like a big tent and like a space to people to really express themselves. That's one of the things that I find so entertaining and like heartwarming about these themed events is that sometimes people really they'll put their heart into it, and you'll see it that someone's able to kind of express a sports themed or something like that they wouldn't otherwise have that ability to.
Yeah. So even within the gay community, people are involved in sports.
Yes, definitely.
Oh, certainly.
Now, tell me a little bit about what the activities involved in being a Mr. Connecticut Leather.
Well, Mr. Connecticut Leather is really about being an ambassador for the leather community, really being a visible component from the leather community to more of the outside, both LGBT and the what we consider vanilla world. And really just as a representative to be a positive influence, that we're not scary people, that sex is not bad, and really that you can be very energetic, very out with your fetishes and experiences.
Yeah. And how about with you, Ryan? What do you hope to have happen in the in your upcoming year?
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to, so far working with definitely a lot of the other organizations like the Imperial Sovereign Court, or recently I had a charity event here in New Haven that benefited the Downtown Evening Soup Kitchen desk.
Wonderful.
And it was wonderful. It was incredible. And
what was it?
It was a canned food drive that we held at York Street. And I guess we've been, the leather community has been running that event there for over 10 years.
Wow.
So it was an honor to kind of continue that tradition.
Right.
I know that during Scooby's time as Mr. Connecticut Leather, he added a charity event, Gutter Ball, and I'm hoping that I can continue that tradition as well.
Yeah, I know gutter ball. That's how I usually bowl.
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, it's gutter bowling, just a different way to throwing the ball down the lane, but it's raised money for a number of different organizations throughout the state.
Yeah, Well, I think that's that's great that you're out there having fun, but also raising
Yes.
money.
Oh, certainly.
And is that sort of the purpose of what your year's time in office is?
That's definitely going to be my main focus is definitely more of the charity and more of the reaching out. I definitely I know that we have a lot of folks both in like the Norwalk or the New London and different corners of the state that might not necessarily come to some of the events that are within the New Haven, Middletown, Meriden sort of Hartford area. So hopefully we can reach out to them or to other corners of the state and kind of like make our Big Ten a bit bigger. That's definitely one of my hopes for the year. But otherwise, definitely very charity focused for sure.
Right. And what happens in the competition that makes you Mr. Connecticut Leather.
Well, there's different categories. It's a bad comparison, but we always say it's like Miss America, but with leather. So there's interview, there's pop question, how you look at a jock or hot wear, a formal leather category, and just cruise wear, bar wear category. It is how you can present yourself to the audience and to the judges the best, just to experience how you can talk to people. It really shows how you can be the ambassador for the community.
Right, and that's what it's all about. Really, is about being the ambassador
Yes.
to bridge that gap, to allow more people to come in and experience the joys of what this means.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been so fun. I really appreciate you guys coming on and talking about this and shedding some light on the topic, because as we know, many people are involved in this, and it's great to know that there's a healthy community within Connecticut.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you.
for having us. Absolutely.
Well, I'm John Allen, host of Out in New Haven, and we've been speaking with Mr. Connecticut 2017, Ian Scooby Rossman, and Mr. Connecticut Leather 2019, Ryan Sperry. Until next time, thank you.